Hey guys, this is me, Kevin Murphy, on my channel called Narcissistic Abuse, Learning Who I Am Again. In this video, I'm going to talk about rage after narcissistic abuse. This is a very, very important topic as a lot of us NERC survivors have experienced explosive anger and explosive temperament because of what has happened to us. And I've heard of a lot of people talk about how they have broken mirrors, broken valuable items, fought people, fought, other, just done some really stupid things out of the rage. And it's very important to know exactly where the rage is coming from, because I myself have experienced post narcissistic abuse rage, and a lot of times it was very, very, very volatile and very scary. It's a very scary place to be. You will start lashing out at people who don't deserve to be lashed out at. You'll start breaking things. You'll start swearing a lot. You'll start, you're very irritable. You're very angry about everything. And during that rage, you start to even experience jealousy and start experiencing envy of other people you feel have it better than you or had come from better families and things of that nature. So I am going to share an experience that I went through when I was, I think it was actually my senior year of college, where I started going to a new church. It wasn't necessarily on campus, but I was a part of this this ministry called Campus Crusade for Christ. As I said in a lot of my other videos, I am a Christian. I've been a Christian for almost 13 years. I got saved when I was 19 years old, when I was in college, back in 2005. So I'm a huge believer of God really helping me through my recovery. There are times where I have tried to shut him out because I've had anger and rage toward God in this whole process. But I'm going to talk about that in this video, and I'm also talk about a situation that I was in when I was in college, my senior year. So I started going to this church, and at the time I was looking for a new church home and trying to, find community and find other people to, fellowship with. So I was at Campus Crusade for Christ meeting, and the pastor of this particular church at the time came and spoke at our meeting. And he was trying to, it was a new church plant, so it was an Acts 29 ministry church. So a lot of people were, there was nobody going to this church at this time. He had just started this ministry back in 2008, the fall of 2008. And I was really excited, and the pastor seemed like a really nice man, and the church seemed very, very intriguing. So I was, I wanted to go. And so I met a lot of the people at this church, and the people who started it, one of the people who helped started this church is actually the brother of one of my good friends who I met at this church, and that's how I ended up in Seattle, because he and his brother were from Seattle. But anyway, I mean, these guys were solid, rock solid people, and a majority of them were from the South, and they came to the New Brunswick, Princeton area to to minister to young college kids and so on and so forth. And the church was mainly geared to get people from Rutgers and Princeton to come and come to the church. So I went to this church for about a year and some change. And during the time, I mean, these guys, I became instant friends with them. Like we went, I've gone to their house, we've had dinners together. I've cooked dinners for them and everything. And it was something, I mean, these guys were very popular. It was a lot of them. So it was kind of like 5, 6 of them, and they all lived in this house on campus in New Brunswick, like right along the outskirts of New Brunswick. And this house was huge. It was like a mansion, and they called it. I'm trying to think of what they called it. They didn't call it the mansion, but they called it something else. But anyway, I would go spend lots of time there, and these guys were people that I opened up to rather quickly. And at that time, I was going through my own stuff. I was not as mature as I am now. I think I met these guys when I was 22, and like I was a mess. Like I divulged a lot of my problems, a lot of my issues to them. During that time, I was going through some issues with my mother, and like issues with just family stuff and family drama. And so I was bringing my drama to their doorstep every chance I got. And I mean, there's a few particular times where I would meet their parents, and I would meet their families, and they would talk about their families, and I would feel this sense of jealousy and say, well, why is it that my family's not like this, or why is it that my family's not like that? And then I would get upset with the guys, and then I would get upset with God and say, there were times where I would be in prayer saying, well, God, it's not fair that so and so gets a good life, or so and so has better parents than I do, or so and so has better circumstances. Now, mind you, I had no idea what these people were going through or what they were experiencing, but I was pissed at God and pissed at everybody and pissed at the world. And a lot of the times, like a lot of times, like I mean, I can imagine how hard I was to deal with, because I was so stinking jealous of them. And a lot of them were very charismatic, not charismatic in a narcissistic way, but charismatic in a way where they had the confidence and the security to talk to people, and to mingle with others and things like that. So a lot of the rage that I experienced was very, very, very narcissistic. And I would slander them. I would say horrible things about them, because I was operating out of my own pain and out of my own jealousy. And I would say things like, oh, they're drunks, and all that, because we would go and have a beer together, or we would do certain things like that together. And even during my behavior, and even in the midst of all of that, they still accepted me. They still chose to be friends with me, and they still chose to include me in their circle. So one of the guys in the group was about to get married, and he had been engaged to his fiance at the time. Well, he's now married to this girl, but the girl lived in Tennessee, and he lived up here in He lived up in New Jersey, and so with the other guy. So he was one of the guys in that group that's first started the church, and he was in seminary school, and a lot of the people who was in that group got invited to this guy's wedding. And so I did not get invited to the wedding at first. And I was feeling a huge some type of way because of the fact that I did not get invited to this man's wedding. And so he was planning to get married to this girl long before he met me. He had sent out invitations to this wedding long before he met me. And during that time, when I found out about the wedding and the fact that I wasn't invited, I was really pissed at him. And we developed a friendship during the time that I was going to church there, and around the time that I started going, toward the tail end of my time at Rutgers. But I wouldn't let it go. I wouldn't I wouldn't wish him well. Instead, I would invent problems. I would invent certain things to try to get him to pay for the fact that he didn't invite Kevin Murphy to his wedding. And I didn't see it as, maybe I'm the one being entitled. Maybe I'm the one that's being a jerk or whatever. And I look back on that time, and it wasn't so much about the wedding, it was more the fact that I felt left out. I felt like I was entitled to be a guest at his wedding. And so so to make a long story short, um I moved in to that house because I had taken a job I had two jobs at the time. I had one job on campus in New Brunswick. So again, I had another opportunity to work a campus job in New Brunswick, and I worked in another office out in Plainfield. But I was living in at my grandmother's house and in Trenton, and the guys decided to let me stay in that big house, with no rent. I didn't have to pay any rent. I didn't have to really do anything but just stay there. And so these guys were so nice to me. There were times where I would cook or go shopping and things like that around the house, and they would have relatives or people coming in from out of town visiting them, and somehow I was triggered. I was triggered by their happiness. I was triggered by the fact that, wow, I wish my parents were like that. Wow, I wish my grandmother was this way, or I wish my mother, whoever. And I would, after that, those family members would leave, I would find some way to pick a fight, especially with this guy who was getting married. So I would say things like, you didn't take out the trash, or something petty, or, you're taking advantage of me because you didn't wash the dishes, or things like that. Because we as narc abuse survivors have to be very careful to not start acting and behaving like the narcissist. And that's why it's important to get counseling. It's important to really talk to people, especially when you have discovered. Now, at this time, I knew nothing about narcissistic personality disorder. I never even heard of narcissistic personality disorder in 2009. But I knew that I was behaving in a toxic manner, and I knew that something wasn't right, and it wasn't. I mean, and I'm making this video specifically for people who are narcissistic abuse survivors, and they're second guessing themselves and thinking that, am I a narcissist? You're not a narcissist. Because you're misbehaving and because you're acting and behaving out of your own pain, you're not a narcissist. The idea and the just the thought of you thinking about whether you're a narcissist or not tells me you're not a narcissist. So you're not a narcissist. A narcissist is a person who takes zero responsibility for what they do. And they're not introspective, worth a damn. And so if you are saying, maybe I should not have done that. Maybe I should apologize to so and so and so for ruining their night, or taking up their time, or doing something like that, and you're starting to take full responsibility for those things, you're not a narcissist. You're just operating out of your own pain and your own abuse. And that's why I make these videos, because I wish back then I had these videos and I knew about narcissistic personality disorder. And I would have been able to avoid a lot of pain, a lot of heartache if I knew what this stuff was. And So while I was living in the house, I would, pick fights with the guys, and I would make things all about me, about my problems, about my what makes me happy. And so my graduation had happened while I was living in that house. My college graduation. I had graduated in May of 2009, and they all came to my graduation. They came to the dinner, the after dinner or whatever, and they treated me so kind. And I was still fixated and perseverating over the fact that I did not get invited to this guy's wedding. And so finally, he broke down and said, I would like for you to come to the wedding. And I was excited to come to the wedding and things like that, but I never made it to the wedding. And here is why. Three about 2 or 3 weeks after my college graduation, I was picking a petty fight. I got triggered by something in that house where a girl, there was this girl within that group that I really, 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 really liked. And one of the guys kind of found out that I liked this girl. And because I was unhealthy, and because I wasn't, a good, it wasn't that I wasn't a good or nice person, but I wasn't healthy, and I was not healthy enough to be with this girl. And so the guy in that house told this girl that, Kevin Murphy really likes you, but I don't suggest that you go out with him because yada 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 and this, that, and the third. So he told me that he said that, and he told me that he told this girl how I felt about her. He didn't go into detail, but he wanted, I guess it was his way of trying to protect the girl and trying to protect me. And I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as this guy is trying to step in on me trying to get with this girl. And, and I didn't think of the fact that, now maybe he should have done it differently, but if I'm going to be honest, I wasn't healthy enough to have a relationship with anybody. And I started cursing at him. I started, provoking him to throw me out of the house. I started, doing all kinds of stuff. And so, from there, I carried that grudge, and I started getting even more jealous, and started thinking about, well, they think they're better than me, and they think because they come from this that they're better, and it turned into a rival instead of a friendship. And these guys were legitimately trying to be friends with me, and I was pushing them away. And so this one particular night, I went batshit crazy, and I went in and started throwing their dishes around the house. And and the guy who was getting married came home and saw what I did and confronted me about throwing the dishes around in the house. And so then I had a glass, and I tried to throw the glass at him, and they let me go. I got put out of the house. And so I ended up having to go back to, and this is a year after, and I talked about this in a video I made earlier this week. This was exactly a year after, almost to the date, when I got thrown out at this house that the last year, the year previous to that, I was thrown out of that landlord's house dealing with the girl that I was working with on campus when I was working at Rutgers the previous year. So we have a pattern going on here. But at that time, I didn't identify a pattern. But as you get healthier and as you heal, you'll start to see, this is why I behaved this way. That's why I threw that glass. It was foolish for me to throw that glass. It was foolish for me to hook up with this girl who went to the Puerto Rican Action Board and all this other stuff. But when you start your healing process and you start your recovery and you stay away from the narcissists in your life, you start to really work on yourself. because now I would never do anything like that. I would never do anything to where if a person is getting married and I'm not invited to the wedding, I'm going to wish them well. I'm not going to throw a temper tantrum. I'm not going to throw a hissy fit. I'm not going to sit here and wrap my identity around the fact whether around someone else's invitation to their wedding. Sure, you're disappointed. Sure, you're hurt. Sure, you feel left out. But as an adult, it is our responsibility to maintain our own composure, because what happens is you look like the fool. And so somehow we worked through that. Even though I was thrown out of the house and things like that, I still maintain friends with these people. And um we weren't super close as we were when I was living in the house, or before I lived in the house, but we still talked, and they still accepted me and things like that. But as survivors, we have to really get a grip on our rage, because when we don't get a grip on our rage, we start to take it out on people who don't deserve that wrath. The narcissist is the one that deserves our wrath. The narcissist is the one who made our lives a living hell. These people who come into our lives, who are generous to us, and they may seem on the surface to have better life, and even if they do, even if they do have a better life than you, if you love a person and you love them, why would you want anything bad to happen to them? Why would you not want them to have a good life? Why would you not celebrate their accomplishments? But see, that's the narcissist has taught you how to be jealous of other people. The narcissist has taught you how to not celebrate in other people's victories. Because I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he was telling me that, yeah, it's normal for your friends to not to want you to do bad. It's normal for your friends to celebrate in your misery. It's not normal. That is not normal. And if you have a friend that is celebrating in your own misery, you need to get the hell away from that friend, because they're not your friend. That's a friend of me. And frenemies are people who enjoy your misery and enjoy your pain. And those are people that you do not want in your life. And those are people that are operating out of their own pain. And you cannot reinforce that kind of behavior. And so these guys stopped reinforcing the behavior. And instead of me checking myself, I started blaming them, and then I left them and went to, that's when I moved to Seattle. And so, and brought that baggage from there in New Jersey to where I was in Washington. So it is very important to really check on your temperament. If you feel like your blood is about to boil over, if you feel that you are getting ready to get really angry and jealous of someone else, think about right this is what I suggest you do, because this has worked for me. Make a list of things that you really love about yourself. Make a list of things that are positive attributes of who you are. So if you feel you're kind and compassionate, write it down on a piece of paper. If you feel that, think of things that God has blessed you with. If you have a good job, write those things down. If you have a nice car, if you have good friends or whatever, write those things down and think about those things. Really meditate on those things that you have, because I have, and that has helped me not be jealous of other people. I'm not jealous of other people anymore. I'm not jealous of other people's success, because I have my own successes. I have a great job. I have a nice place to live. I have a nice car to drive. I have wonderful people in my life. I am so blessed. Even having Jesus in my life alone makes me feel abundantly blessed. And that's where you have to be. It's not about how many friends you got, how many people hitting you up on the weekend, and how many people is hitting up your Instagram feed and things like that. No, you have to look for happiness in God and look for happiness within yourself. Now, a lot of my viewers, you probably don't. I'm not sure what your relationship is with God and how you're going through your own recovery, but what helped me was really digging deep into my own stuff, really digging deep into why I was behaving the way that I was. Why was I so miserable? Why was I so jealous? And I had to do that with God. I could not do that on my own. I couldn't do it on my own. And I've tried to do it by myself. But there were certain things that God was revealing to me through this process that I would not have found through a friend, even through a therapist, or through anybody else. And I can say it's a miracle what God has done in this recovery. The fact that I don't feel jealousy of other people's happiness anymore. I am so happy for my friends when they do well. I am so happy. You know, I went to one of my friends' wedding, a wedding that one of my friends had back in September, and I was so happy for him. I mean, it was one of the best days of the year for me. And it wasn't my day. It wasn't about me. It was about him and his wife. And they're two dear friends of mine. And I was so happy for them. And that's where you have to get. You have to get into that place of being happy for other people and focusing on the things that God has given to you. That's good. You know, think about, you know, I have wonderful friends. I have a good job. I have, you know, I am intelligent. I am thoughtful. I am kind. I am caring. Think about those things. And once you think about those things, number one, you can use those things to share with other people in your life. And number two, you focus on those positive attributes instead of focusing on the negative. You know, I have no control over what my mom and dad do. I have no control over the kind of people they are, but I have control over the kind of person I am. And survivors, you are not your parents. You are not your upbringing. You are not your disorder. A lot of you may deal with PTSD, may deal with bipolar disorder, may even deal with borderline personality disorder as an effect of narcissistic abuse. I get it. But at the same time, you are not your diagnosis. You need to separate your diagnosis, your issues, your problems from who you are, and write down and create a list of positive attributes of who you are and share them with the world, because our world is hurting. Whether it's dealing with narcissistic abuse or toxic behavior, we live in a really, really broken world. And there's a lot of people that do need our compassion and that do need our help and that do need our wisdom. And if we're just sitting here just focused on ourselves and licking our wounds and slandering other people and just staying in this sense of self-pity, then we're not going to be a light to anybody else, and we're not going to be a light to the world. So work on your attitude, work on adjusting how you see yourself, because that's where the rage comes from. The narcissist has bombarded you with lie after lie after lie after lie after, negativity and negative messages over and over and over and over again. It's just bombarding your psyche with these things. And as a result, you're pissed off and you're mad and you're angry, and you're angry with people who are trying to help you, and you're angry I was angry with the only one that could help me, and that was God. And there were times I was swearing at him in prayer. I was throwing things and threatening to leave Christianity and saying that this was a waste of time. And it's not about, it's about us when it comes to helping other people. We have so much to offer the world, but if we stay stuck in our own bitterness and our own anger and our own pain, we can't do anything to help ourselves or to help the world. So, if you find yourself experiencing narcissistic, post-narcissistic abuse rage, or if you find yourself experiencing jealousy or fear of missing out or being left out, please journal. Please, talk to a friend. Don't feel like you have to deal with this on your own, because the wrath and the anger and the irritability is a sign that something is internally wrong, and you have to dig deep. It's a lot of work. For me, it was years and years and years of therapy. It was years of journaling. It was years of doing my own inner healing for me. And there's times I still have, there's days I still have issues with my temper, but it's not nearly as bad as it was before. I mean, it's not nearly as bad as it was, when I was in college. And it should, you'll see the fruit in your life once you take the steps. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's easy and it's not that hard. It is very hard. It's very, very, very hard, but it's worth it, because you are empowering yourself and you are training yourself to be a better person so you can help someone else who is out there dealing with this kind of stuff. So please stay tuned for more videos. My name is Kevin Murphy. Please subscribe to this channel. I thank all of the survivors and who have been tuning in, and I thank all of the people who have subscribed to my channel. Please spread the word about my channel. I will be making more videos. I think I might be on here again later tonight. Depends on what's going on with me, but I still want to talk about narcissistic mirroring, but I felt like this was a topic on my heart today about narcissistic rage, post-narcissistic abuse rage, because it's a very, very, very dangerous place to be in, and you'll lose the support, the very thing that you want in your life. You will lose it because of the rage and the pain that you have. And because and I also want to say this, because you're experiencing rage after narcissistic abuse does not make you a borderline personality disorder. Does not make you a borderline. Again, if you're introspective to this stuff and you realize that you have a problem and you want to get help for it, and you're making the appropriate steps to get help for the issues that you have, then you do not have a personality disorder. You have a personality disorder when you take zero responsibility for your behavior. So always remember that. The way to know that whether you have a personality disorder or not is, do I take responsibility for my behavior, or do I blame it on everybody else? Even if you see a pattern in the behavior, are you proactively taking responsibility for your behavior? So if you are, you don't have a personality disorder. If you don't, then there's a chance that you do have a personality disorder. So I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.